The coffee shop was busier than usual that Tuesday morning. I had chosen a small table near the window, the one where sunlight always warmed my shoulders just right. At 70 years old, these little comforts mattered more than they used to. I was waiting for my usual order when I heard a voice that made my heart skip. It was Daniel.
My son.
My only child. The boy I had raised alone after his father left us when he was just 6 years old. Before I continue this story, let me know where you are watching from in the comments below. Hit like button and subscribe if you believe that real family love includes boundaries, consequences, and mutual respect. I turned slightly, careful not to be seen. There he was, sitting 3 tables away with his wife, Jennifer. They were huddled close together, speaking in hushed tones that carried just enough for me to catch fragments. My first instinct was to call out to them, to wave and ask if I could join their table. But something in their body language stopped me. Something secretive. Something that made my stomach tighten with an unfamiliar fear. I watched them for a moment, debating whether to announce myself. Then I heard it.
Clear as day.
Daniel's voice cutting through the ambient noise of the coffee shop like a knife. She doesn't get anything. Mom signed everything over to me last month. She has no idea what those papers actually meant. The world tilted. My hands gripped the edge of the table as if it were the only solid thing left in my universe. The warmth from the window suddenly felt scorching. My breath caught in my throat. Those papers. The ones Daniel had brought to my house 5 weeks ago. The ones he said were just updates to my will. Simple estate planning, he had called it.
Nothing to worry about, Mom.
Just making sure everything is organized for the future. I had trusted him. Of course I had trusted him. He was my son, the child I had sacrificed everything for. I worked 3 jobs after his father abandoned us. I sewed clothes late into the night. I cleaned offices before dawn. I did everything to make sure Daniel had what he needed. A good education, a stable home, opportunities one never had. And he knew it. He knew every sacrifice, every sleepless night, every meal I skipped so he could eat. Jennifer leaned closer to him, her voice dropping even lower. But what if she finds out? What if someone tells her? Daniel laughed. Actually laughed. The sound was cold and sharp. Nothing like the warm chuckle I remembered from his childhood. Who's going to tell her? She doesn't talk to anyone but us. She barely leaves that old house. And even if she did find out, what could she do? She signed it all willingly. Every document has her signature. Her consent. It's all completely legal. My chest felt tight. Each word was another weight pressing down on me. I wanted to stand up, to march over to their table and demand an explanation. But my legs wouldn't move. It was as if my body had frozen in shock while my mind raced to piece together what was happening. Jennifer sipped her latte and nodded slowly. So the house is yours now.
Completely?
Completely. Daniel's voice was filled with satisfaction. The house, the savings account, even that little investment Dad set up before he left. Everything. I had her sign it all over. Power of attorney, property transfer, beneficiary changes. The whole package. And the best part? She thought she was just updating her will to make things easier for me when she passes. She has no clue. She gave me everything while she's still alive. The betrayal cut deeper than anything I had ever felt. Deeper than my husband walking out. Deeper than the years of poverty and struggle. This was different. This was my child. The person I had poured my entire life into. And he had stolen from me. Methodically. Deliberately. With full knowledge of what he was doing. I sat frozen, listening to them plan my future, as if I were already dead. As if I didn't matter. As if 30 years of love and sacrifice meant nothing. So what happens to her now? Jennifer asked, her tone casual, as if discussing what to have for dinner. Daniel shrugged. She can stay in the house for now. I'm not heartless. But once I decide to sell it, she'll have to find somewhere else to go. Maybe one of those senior living places. The cheap ones. She doesn't need much. The cheap ones. My mind flashed to the cheerful lies Daniel had told me just last week. Mom, you'll never have to worry about anything. I'll always take care of you. You raised me right. I'll make sure you're comfortable for the rest of your life. All lies. Every single word. But what if she needs money? Jennifer pressed. What if she gets sick or has an emergency? That's not my problem anymore. Daniel's voice was flat, emotionless. She gave me control of everything. If she needs money, she can ask me for it. And I'll decide if it's worth giving her any. But honestly, she's old. How much longer does she have? 5 years? 10? She can live on Social Security until then. Something inside me cracked. Not broke.
Cracked.
Like ice on a frozen lake, spider-webbing outward from a single point of impact. I could feel it spreading through my chest, through my mind, changing something fundamental about who I was. The sweet, trusting mother who always saw the best in people was dying in that coffee shop. And someone harder, colder, and far more dangerous was taking her place. I reached into my purse with shaking hands and pulled out my phone. My fingers trembled as I opened the voice recorder app. My granddaughter had shown me how to use it months ago when I mentioned wanting to record some family stories. Little did I know I would be using it for this. I pressed record and set the phone on the table, angled toward Daniel and Jennifer. They were completely oblivious to me, caught up in their scheming, their celebration of my downfall. Jennifer giggled. I can't believe you actually pulled it off. I mean, I knew you were smart, but this is next level. Your mom just handed you everything. It wasn't that hard. Daniel sounded proud. She's been lonely since Dad left. Vulnerable. She trusts me completely. All I had to do was act concerned about her future, bring over some official-looking papers, and walk her through signing them. She didn't even read them. Just signed wherever I told her to. My hand clenched around my coffee cup, so tightly I thought it might shatter. He had used my loneliness, my trust, my love. He had weaponized everything that made me human and turned it against me. And the lawyer didn't ask any questions? Jennifer's voice carried a hint of concern now. Why would he? Daniel replied smoothly. I hired a guy who doesn't ask too many questions if the price is right. Mom came willingly. She signed everything in front of him. As far as he's concerned, it's just a mother giving her devoted son control of her affairs. Happens all the time with elderly people. Elderly. The word stung. I was 70, yes, but I was healthy. Sharp. Active. I still did all my own cooking, cleaning, and gardening. I volunteered at the local library twice a week. I was not some feeble, confused old woman who needed her son to take over her life. But that was how he saw me. That was how he had sold this to his lawyer, to Jennifer, probably to himself. Poor old mom, getting on in years, needing help managing her affairs. What a dutiful son I am for stepping in. The recording app showed 3 minutes had passed. I kept it running, capturing every word of their conversation. So, when are you planning to sell the house? Jennifer asked.
Soon.
Daniel's voice took on an excited edge. I already talked to a real estate agent. The market is hot right now. That old house is sitting on a prime piece of land. We could get at least $400,000 for it. Maybe more. $400,000. My home. The house I had bought with my savings after years of renting. The house where Daniel grew up. Where I had painted his bedroom blue because it was his favorite color. Where I had nursed him through chickenpox and celebrated every birthday. Where every corner held a memory of us together. And he was going to sell it for money. As if none of that history mattered. What are we going to do with $400,000? Jennifer's eyes gleamed with greed. First, pay off our debts. Daniel counted on his fingers. The credit cards, the car loans, that personal loan from my buddy. That's about $60,000 right there. Then I'm thinking we upgrade. New house in that development we liked. The one with the pool and the golf course. We put down a good chunk, finance the rest. Still leaves us with plenty for a nice vacation. Maybe Europe. You've always wanted to go to Paris.
Paris.
They were planning a European vacation with the money from selling my home. The home I would have nowhere to go from. The home that represented every sacrifice I had ever made. I felt sick. Physically sick. But I kept the phone recording. Kept listening. Because I needed to hear all of it. Every horrible detail. What if your mom refuses to leave when you sell the house? Jennifer asked. She can't refuse. Daniel's tone turned hard.
I own it now.
She has no legal right to stay if I tell her to leave. And if she tries to make trouble, I'll have her removed. Simple as that. Have her removed. Like I was a squatter. Like I was some stranger trespassing on property that belonged to someone else. Not the woman who had birthed him, raised him, loved him with every fiber of my being. You're really not worried about her finding out? Jennifer pressed. I mean, what if she talks to someone? A friend or another lawyer? Daniel shook his head confidently. She won't. Mom doesn't have friends, not really. She's too proud to admit she might need help. And she definitely won't go to a lawyer because that would cost money, and she's always been cheap about stuff like that. No, she'll just accept whatever I tell her. She always has.
Cheap.
He called me cheap. I who had gone without so he could have. I who had bought him the expensive sneakers he wanted for school while I wore shoes with holes in them. I who had paid for his college while living on rice and beans. But he was right about one thing. I had always accepted whatever he told me. Always believed him. Always trusted that my son had my best interests at heart. Never again. The recording app showed 8 minutes now. 8 minutes of confession. 8 minutes of evidence. 8 minutes that would change everything. Jennifer glanced at her watch. We should probably get going. I have that appointment at noon. Yeah, let's go. Daniel pulled out his wallet and dropped some bills on the table. We can talk more about this tonight. Start making real plans. They stood up, gathering their things. I ducked my head, pretending to be absorbed in my phone. They walked right past my table without even glancing my way. Why would they? In their minds, I was probably at home, clueless and alone, waiting for my loving son to call. The door chimed as they left. I watched through the window as they walked to Daniel's car, still talking, still smiling. Jennifer laughed at something he said. They looked like any normal couple. Happy. In love. Building a future together. A future built on my destruction. I stopped the recording. 9 minutes and 43 seconds. Nearly 10 minutes of my son confessing to fraud, theft, and elder abuse. Because that's what this was, even if he had convinced himself it was legal. Using someone's trust to manipulate them into signing away their assets was abuse. And I had the proof. My hands had stopped shaking. In fact, I felt strangely calm. The shock had burned away, leaving something colder and harder in its place. Determination. Purpose.
Rage.
I saved the recording to my cloud storage, then made 2 more backup copies on different services. I had learned that much from the true crime podcasts I listened to while sewing. Protect your evidence. Multiple copies. Multiple locations. Then I picked up my phone and called someone I hadn't spoken to in almost 20 years. Robert Chun. He had been my lawyer when I bought the house. We had kept in touch sporadically over the years, Christmas cards mostly. But I knew he was still practicing. I had seen his name in a news article just last month about a big case he won. The phone rang 3 times before a familiar voice answered. Chun and Associates. This is Robert Chun. Robert, this is Margaret Sullivan. I don't know if you remember me. Margaret? Of course I remember you.
How are you?
It's been years. I'm not well, Robert. I need your help. It's urgent. There must have been something in my voice because his tone immediately became serious. What's happened? My son stole everything from me. My house, my savings, everything. And I have proof. Silence on the other end for a moment. Then, can you come to my office today? This afternoon? I can be there in an hour. I'll clear my schedule. Come straight here and don't talk to anyone else about this. Especially not your son. I won't. I hung up and sat there for another minute, gathering myself. The coffee shop continued its normal rhythm around me. People chatting, laughing, working on laptops. None of them had any idea that my entire world had just shattered and reformed into something unrecognizable. I left money on the table for my coffee, which I hadn't even touched, and walked out into the bright sunlight. The weather was beautiful. Clear blue sky, gentle breeze, birds singing in the trees. It seemed wrong somehow. The world should have been dark and stormy to match what I was feeling inside. But nature didn't care about human drama. The sun kept shining. Life went on. And so would I. The bus ride to Robert's office took 40 minutes. I spent the time reviewing the recording, making sure it was clear and audible.
It was.
Every word was crystal clear. Every damning sentence perfectly captured. Robert's office was in a tall building downtown, the kind with marble floors and expensive artwork on the walls. I took the elevator to the 12th floor and stepped into a tastefully decorated waiting room. The receptionist smiled at me. "You must be Mrs. Sullivan. Mr. Chun is expecting you."
Go right in.
Robert's office was large with a wall of windows overlooking the city. He stood as I entered, coming around his desk to shake my hand. His hair was grayer than I remembered, but his eyes were still sharp and kind. "Margaret, please sit. Tell me everything." I told him. Every detail, from the beginning. The papers Daniel brought to my house 5 weeks ago. His explanation that they were just updates. How I had trusted him and signed without reading carefully. Then finding him in the coffee shop this morning. The conversation I overheard. The recording I made. Robert listened without interrupting, his expression growing darker with each revelation. When I finished, he sat back in his chair and steepled his fingers. "May I hear the recording?" I played it for him. All 9 minutes and 43 seconds. His face remained impassive as he listened, but I could see his jaw tightening. When it ended, he looked at me with something like fury in his eyes. "Margaret, what your son did is not just unethical. It's criminal. This is elder fraud. Financial abuse. Depending on exactly what he had you sign and how he presented it to you. This could be theft by deception, forgery if he misrepresented the documents, and a violation of fiduciary duty."
Can we stop it?
"Can we get my house back?" Robert nodded firmly. "We can, and we will. First, I need to see every document you signed. Do you have copies?" Daniel took them. He said he would file them and keep them safe for me.
Of course he did.
Robert's voice was bitter. "Okay, we'll get copies from the county recorder's office and any other relevant agencies. Next, I'm filing for an emergency restraining order to prevent your son from taking any further action regarding your property or finances. Then we're going to the police." "The police?" "Margaret, your son committed crimes. Multiple crimes. This needs to be reported. And frankly, a criminal investigation will strengthen our civil case." My heart pounded. The police. Criminal charges.
This was really happening.
My son could go to jail. Robert must have seen the conflict on my face because his expression softened. "I know this is hard. He's your son. But he made his choices. He chose to betray your trust, to steal from you, to plan your displacement. You have every right to protect yourself." He was right. I knew he was right. But it still hurt. God, it hurt. What do I do now? Now we fight back. Robert pulled out a legal pad and started making notes. "I'm going to need you to write down everything you remember about the day Daniel brought those papers. Every word he said. Every explanation he gave. Every detail you can recall. Then we're going to reconstruct exactly what happened and prove that you were deceived." "I can do that." "Good. Also, do not contact Daniel. Don't call him. Don't text him. Don't respond if he reaches out to you. Let him think everything is fine. The longer he remains unaware that you know, the better our position." "Okay. And Margaret?" Robert looked me straight in the eye. "I want you to prepare yourself. This is going to get ugly. Daniel is going to deny everything. He's going to claim you're confused or senile. He's going to try to paint you as an unreliable old woman who doesn't understand what she signed. His lawyer will attack your credibility. Let them try."
My voice was steady.
"I have the recording. I have the truth. And I have something Daniel doesn't." "What's that?" "Nothing left to lose." Robert smiled grimly. "Then let's make him regret the day he decided to steal from his mother." I spent the next 3 hours in Robert's office, writing out everything I could remember. Every conversation with Daniel over the past few months. Every time he had asked about my finances. Every seemingly innocent question that now took on sinister meaning. Robert made phone calls, sent emails, started the machinery of justice grinding into motion. By the time I left his office, restraining order paperwork had been filed, A police report was scheduled for the next day, and Robert had contacted an investigator to start building our case. I took the bus home as the sun began to set. My small house looked the same as always. The garden I had tended for 20 years. The front porch where I sat on summer evenings. The blue door I had painted myself. But it didn't feel like mine anymore. It felt like something I was fighting for. Something I might lose. I went inside and locked the door behind me. The house was quiet. Empty. I walked through the rooms, touching familiar objects. The couch where Daniel used to do his homework. The kitchen table where we had shared thousands of meals. The photo albums filled with pictures of us together, smiling, happy. Had it all been a lie? Had he always been capable of this? Or had something changed him? When had my loving son become a stranger willing to destroy me? I didn't have answers. Maybe I never would. My phone rang. Daniel. I stared at his name on the screen, remembering Robert's warning not to talk to him. The call went to voicemail. A minute later, a text came through. Hey Mom, just checking in. Want to grab dinner this week? The casualness of it made me feel sick. He was acting like everything was normal. Like he hadn't just spent the morning planning how to sell my home out from under me. I didn't respond. I turned off my phone and sat in the growing darkness of my living room, letting the silence wash over me. Tomorrow I would go to the police. Tomorrow I would start the fight to take back what was mine. Tomorrow I would begin the process of destroying my son's carefully laid plans. But tonight I let myself grieve. Grieve for the relationship that was lost. Grieve for the son I thought I had. Grieve for the trust that could never be rebuilt. I cried for the first time since leaving the coffee shop. Deep, racking sobs that came from somewhere primal. For the betrayal. For the loneliness. For the future I had imagined that would never exist. But when the tears finally stopped, I felt something unexpected. Relief. The truth was out. The pretending was over. I didn't have to smile and play the loving mother while my son robbed me blind. I could fight back. And I would win. The next morning, I woke early and got dressed carefully. Robert had suggested I look put together for the police meeting.
Competent.
Alert. Not like the confused old woman Daniel would try to paint me as. I chose a navy blue dress and low heels. Did my hair and makeup. Put on the pearl earrings my mother had given me. When I looked in the mirror, I saw a woman who meant business. Robert picked me up at 9. We drove to the police station in silence, both of us preparing for what was ahead. The detective assigned to my case was a woman named Sarah Rodriguez. She was in her 40s with kind eyes and a no-nonsense demeanor. She led us into a small interview room and offered us coffee. Mrs. Sullivan, I've reviewed the preliminary information your lawyer sent over. I want you to tell me everything in your own words. Start from the beginning. I told the story again. It was getting easier with each retelling, the emotional distance growing. Detective Rodriguez took notes, stopping me occasionally to ask clarifying questions. When I played her the recording, her expression hardened. This is good evidence. Very good. She looked at Robert. Combined with the documents showing what he actually had her sign versus what he told her they were, we have a strong case for fraud and theft. What happens now? I asked. Now I investigate. I'll interview your son, though he'll likely lawyer up immediately. I'll subpoena bank records, phone records, emails. I'll talk to the lawyer who notarized the documents. We'll build a timeline of his actions and his intent. How long will this take? Detective Rodriguez sighed. These cases can take months, sometimes longer. But I promise you, Mrs. Sullivan, we will pursue this. What your son did is unconscionable, and he needs to face consequences. I left the police station feeling drained but hopeful. Robert drove me home, walking me to the door like the gentleman he was. Remember, Margaret, don't engage with Daniel. Let him come to you, but don't respond. We want to see what he does when he starts to realize something is wrong. I nodded. Thank you, Robert, for everything. He squeezed my hand gently. We're going to win this. I promise you. That afternoon, while I was trying to distract myself with some sewing, my phone rang. Daniel again. I let it go to voicemail. He called 3 more times over the next hour. Each time, I didn't answer. Finally, a text came through. Mom, are you okay? You're not answering.
I'm worried about you.
The irony of that message was almost funny.
He was worried about me.
The son who was planning to make me homeless was worried because I didn't answer his calls. Another text followed. I'm going to stop by the house to check on you. My heart rate spiked. I didn't want him here.
Didn't want to see him.
But Robert had said not to engage, to let things play out. 20 minutes later, I heard a car in the driveway, then knocking on the door. Mom, are you in there? It's me, Daniel. I sat frozen on my couch, not making a sound. More knocking, more insistent now. Mom, I know you're home. Your car is here. Please open the door. I remained silent. I heard him trying the doorknob. Locked, of course. Then I heard footsteps around the side of the house. He was checking windows. This was my son, the boy I had raised. And he was circling my house like a predator, trying to find a way in because I wouldn't open the door. After a few minutes, I heard his car start and drive away. I exhaled slowly, my hands shaking. My phone immediately buzzed with a text. I came by, but you weren't home, I guess. Call me when you get this. Love you. He was lying. He knew I was home. He had seen my car. But he was pretending otherwise, keeping up the facade of the concerned son. I forwarded the text to Robert with a simple message. He came to the house. Robert's response came quickly. Good. He's getting nervous. Stay the course. The next few days were tense. Daniel called and texted repeatedly. Each message was variations of the same theme.
Checking in. Worried about me.
Wanted to see me. Always ending with love you. Words that meant nothing. Words that were tools of manipulation rather than expressions of genuine feeling. On the 4th day, Robert called. We have a court date for the emergency hearing. 1 week from today. The judge will review our motion to void the documents and return control of your assets to you. What are the chances we win? Robert was quiet for a moment. Honestly, very good. The recording is damning. And I spoke to the lawyer, who notarized the documents. He confirmed that Daniel did all the talking, that you seemed passive and confused. He said if he had known what was really happening, he would have refused to notarize. Relief flooded through me. So we have a chance. More than a chance, Margaret. We have a strong case. But I need to warn you, Daniel will be at the hearing. He'll have to be, to defend himself. Are you prepared for that? I thought about seeing my son again, confronting him across a courtroom, watching him try to defend the indefensible. I'm prepared. The night before the hearing, I couldn't sleep. I kept imagining different scenarios. What if Daniel cried and apologized? What if he blamed Jennifer? What if he claimed he was trying to help me? What if, despite everything, some part of me still wanted to forgive him? But then I remembered his voice in that coffee shop. She doesn't get anything. The cold calculation. The complete lack of remorse. The casual cruelty.
No.
There was no forgiveness for this. Some betrayals were too deep. The courtroom was smaller than I expected. Robert and I sat at one table. Across the aisle, Daniel sat with his lawyer, a sharp-looking man in an expensive suit. Daniel stared at me as I walked in. His expression was a mixture of shock and something I couldn't quite read. Fear, maybe, or anger. I didn't look at him. I kept my eyes forward, my spine straight. All rise. The bailiff announced the judge's entrance. Judge Elizabeth Morrison was a severe-looking woman in her 60s. She took her seat and reviewed the papers in front of her. This is a petition to void certain legal documents on grounds of fraud and undue influence. She looked up at us. I've reviewed the preliminary materials. Mr. Chun, you may present your case. Robert stood. Your Honor, my client, Margaret Sullivan, was deceived by her son into signing over her house, her savings, and control of her finances. She believed she was simply updating her will. Instead, she transferred everything to him while she was still alive, leaving her with nothing. He played the recording for the judge. The courtroom was silent except for Daniel's voice admitting to everything. When it ended, Judge Morrison's expression was ice cold. She looked at Daniel. Mr. Sullivan, did you have your mother sign documents transferring her assets to you? Daniel's lawyer stood. Your Honor, my client was attempting to help his elderly mother organize her estate planning. That's not what I asked. The judge's voice was sharp. Did you, or did you not have your mother sign documents giving you ownership of her house and control of her bank accounts? I did, but… And did you tell her that's what she was signing? Daniel hesitated. I explained that we were arranging her affairs. Did you specifically tell her she was giving you ownership of her house while she was still alive? Yes or no? The pause was long and damning.
No.
Judge Morrison made a note. And were you planning to sell this house? Daniel's lawyer tried to intervene. Your Honor, my client's future plans are not. They are absolutely relevant. The judge cut him off. Mr. Sullivan, answer the question. I had discussed the possibility with my wife. Daniel's voice was barely above a whisper. Without informing your mother, who believed she still owned the house. Another damning pause.
Yes.
Judge Morrison sat back. I've heard enough. The documents in question are hereby voided. Mrs. Sullivan's house and all other assets are returned to her sole ownership, effective immediately. Furthermore, I'm issuing a restraining order preventing Mr. Sullivan from having any contact with his mother or any access to her property or finances. She looked at Daniel with unconcealed disgust. What you did, Mr. Sullivan, is one of the most reprehensible things I've seen in 30 years on the bench. You used your mother's love and trust to rob her. I'm referring this case to the district attorney's office for potential criminal prosecution. The gavel came down. Case closed. I sat there, letting the words sink in. I had won. My house was mine again. My savings were mine. Daniel was barred from contacting me. I had won. Robert put a hand on my shoulder. Are you all right? I turned to look at Daniel. He was pale, staring at the judge in shock. His lawyer was gathering papers, looking annoyed. Our eyes met across the courtroom. I saw panic there. Desperation. Maybe even a plea for help. I looked away. Yes, I told Robert. I'm all right. As we left the courthouse, Daniel tried to approach me. Mom, please let me explain. The bailiff stepped between us. Sir, you heard the judge. You're not to have contact with your mother. But she's my mom. Daniel's voice cracked. I made a mistake. I'm sorry. I kept walking. Robert stayed close by my side, protective. Behind us, I could hear Daniel calling out.
Mom, please.
I'm sorry. I love you. The words meant nothing. Less than nothing. They were just sounds, empty and hollow. Outside, Robert turned to me. How do you feel? I took a deep breath of fresh air. Like I can breathe again. The house is yours again, Margaret. The bank accounts are yours. Everything is back in your name as of this moment. I'll make sure all the paperwork is filed correctly. Thank you, Robert. For everything. He smiled. That's what lawyers are for. Righting wrongs. We shook hands, and I walked to my car. My car, that I owned, that would take me to my house that I owned. I drove home slowly, savoring the feeling of control returned. When I pulled into the driveway, the house looked different somehow. Brighter. More welcoming. I went inside and walked through each room, reclaiming them. This was mine. All of it. And no one was going to take it from me ever again. My phone rang. An unknown number. I almost didn't answer, but something made me pick up. Mrs. Sullivan? This is Detective Rodriguez. I wanted to let you know that based on the judge's ruling and the evidence you provided, we're moving forward with criminal charges against your son. Fraud in the first degree, theft, and elder abuse. What does that mean? It means he's going to be arrested. Probably within the next few days. He'll be charged, arraigned, and likely offered a plea deal. If he doesn't take it, this goes to trial. And if he's convicted, he could face up to 10 years in prison. 10 years. My son could go to prison for 10 years. I know this is difficult, Mrs. Sullivan, but he committed serious crimes. He has to face the consequences. I understand. Thank you for calling, Detective. I hung up and sat in my kitchen, processing this new information. Daniel was going to be arrested. He might go to prison. His life was going to be destroyed. Because of me.
No.
I stopped that thought immediately. Not because of me. Because of him. Because of his choices. His actions. His betrayal. I didn't do this to him. He did it to himself. Over the next week, I started putting my life back together. I changed all my passwords. I met with my bank to ensure all accounts were secure. I had new locks installed on the house, even though the restraining order meant Daniel couldn't legally come here. I also started seeing a therapist. Dr. Karen Wilson specialized in family trauma and elder abuse. She helped me process what had happened to understand that my feelings of guilt and grief were normal. You're mourning the son you thought you had, Dr. Wilson told me during one session. That's a legitimate loss. The person you believed Daniel to be doesn't exist. Of course you're grieving. But I also feel angry. So angry I can barely breathe sometimes. That's normal too. You have every right to be angry. He betrayed you in the worst possible way. Will I ever stop being angry? Dr. Wilson smiled gently. Eventually, yes. But it takes time. And it's okay to be angry right now. Use that anger to fuel your recovery. Channel it into rebuilding your life. I took her advice. I threw myself into projects I had been putting off for years. I painted the bedroom. I planted a new garden. I joined a book club at the library. I started living again. 3 weeks after the court hearing, Detective Rodriguez called again. Your son was arrested this morning. He's being held on $50,000 bail. Did he make bail? Not yet. He's trying to. But between the restraining order and the charges, he's having trouble finding someone to post it for him. I felt a complicated mix of emotions. Relief that he was facing consequences. Sadness that it had come to this. And a strange sense of satisfaction. What happens next? Arraignment is scheduled for next week. After that, his lawyer will probably try to negotiate a plea deal. If he's smart, he'll take it. A trial wouldn't go well for him given the evidence. Will I have to testify? Possibly if it goes to trial. But with the recording and the judge's ruling, I doubt it will get that far. She was right. Daniel's lawyer contacted Robert a few days later. They wanted to negotiate. Robert called me with the details. They're offering to plead guilty to fraud and theft in exchange for a reduced sentence. 5 years, with possibility of parole after 3. What do you think I should do? That's entirely up to you, Margaret. If you want to see this through to trial, we can do that. We'd almost certainly win. But it would be long, public, and emotionally draining. If you accept the plea deal, it's over quickly. He's punished and you can move on. I thought about it for a long time. Part of me wanted the full trial. Wanted Daniel to have to sit there and hear every detail of what he had done read aloud in open court. Wanted a jury to confirm what I already knew, that he was guilty. But another part of me was just tired. Tired of fighting. Tired of reliving the betrayal. Tired of having this consume my life. I want to move on. I told Robert, if he pleads guilty, I'll accept it. Are you sure? I'm sure. The plea hearing was brief. Daniel stood before the judge and admitted his guilt. He pled guilty to fraud and theft. He was sentenced to 5 years in prison with the possibility of parole after serving 3. When the judge asked if he had anything to say, Daniel turned to me.
I'm sorry, Mom.
I don't know what I was thinking. I love you. I didn't react. Didn't cry or nod or acknowledge him in any way. I just sat there, stone-faced, until he looked away. After it was over, Robert walked me out of the courthouse. How are you feeling? Relieved. And sad. And angry. And 100 other things I don't have words for. That's normal. He squeezed my shoulder. You did the right thing, Margaret. Standing up for yourself, demanding justice. You should be proud. I am. And I was. I was proud that I had found the strength to fight back. Proud that I hadn't let him get away with it. Proud that I had reclaimed my life. But I was also heartbroken. Because at the end of the day, my son was going to prison. The child I had loved and raised and sacrificed for had betrayed me so completely that I had to send him away. There was no happy ending to this story. Just survival. Just moving forward. I went home that afternoon and did something I had been putting off. I went through all the photos of Daniel. Every album, every frame, every snapshot. I didn't throw them away. That felt too final, too cruel. But I packed them all into boxes and put them in the attic. Out of sight, out of mind. Then I took down the photos of just me. Me with friends. Me traveling. Me at events. I put those on display instead. This house was going to be about my life now. Not my life as Daniel's mother. Just my life. Months passed. I slowly rebuilt my confidence and my sense of self. I took a watercolor class and discovered I had a talent for it. I started volunteering at a women's shelter, helping other abuse survivors. I dated a bit. Nothing serious, but it was nice to feel wanted, to have someone look at me and see value. I was happy. Not the innocent, naive happiness of before, but a harder, wiser happiness. The happiness that comes from surviving something terrible and coming out stronger on the other side. Daniel wrote to me from prison. Long letters about how sorry he was, how he had made a terrible mistake, how he wanted to make things right. I didn't respond. I didn't even read most of them after the first few. There was nothing he could say that would change what happened. Nothing that would rebuild the trust he had shattered. Dr. Wilson asked me once if I thought I would ever forgive him. I don't know. I answered honestly. Maybe someday. But right now, I don't want to. Right now, I'm still too angry. Still too hurt. And that's okay. It's more than okay. She smiled. It's healthy. You're protecting yourself. That's growth. 2 years after the court case, I received a letter from the parole board. Daniel was up for early release. They wanted to know if I had any objections. I thought about it for a long time. Part of me wanted to object, to keep him locked up for the full 5 years. But another part of me just wanted it to be over. In the end, I wrote a brief letter. I stated the facts of what he had done. I stated that I did not trust him and did not want any contact with him upon his release. But I did not object to his parole. He was released 3 months later. I heard through mutual acquaintances that he was living in another state, working construction, trying to rebuild his life. Good for him, I thought without much feeling. I hoped he had learned something. I hoped he had changed. But honestly, it wasn't my concern anymore. My life was full without him. I had friends, hobbies, purpose. I had peace. One day, about 3 years after everything had happened, I was at the grocery store when I saw someone who looked like Daniel. Same height, same build, same way of walking. My heart started racing. I almost dropped my basket. But then the man turned around, and it wasn't him. Just a stranger who happened to look similar. I realized something in that moment. I was afraid. Even after all this time, even after all the therapy and healing, some part of me was still afraid of my own son. That night, I called Dr. Wilson and asked for an extra session. We talked about fear and trauma and the long road to healing. We talked about how some wounds never fully close, they just become scars we learn to live with. You may always have this fear response when you think you see him. She told me gently. That's trauma. That's what betrayal does to us. But it will get easier with time. She was right. Over the years, the fear faded. The anger softened. The grief became something I could live with rather than something that consumed me. I never spoke to Daniel again. Never saw him again. As far as I know, he stayed away, respected the boundaries I had set. And I built a good life. A full life. A life where I was valued and loved and respected. I was now 78 years old, sitting in my garden on a beautiful spring morning. The flowers I had planted were blooming. The birds were singing. The sun was warm on my face. My phone rang. It was my neighbor's daughter, asking if I could teach her how to sew. I smiled and said yes. Life was good. Different than I had imagined it would be all those years ago. But good. I had survived. I had fought back. I had won.
And that was enough.
The end came not with a dramatic confrontation or a tearful reconciliation. It came with me simply living. Living well. Living on my terms. Daniel had tried to take everything from me. My home. My security. My dignity. But he hadn't succeeded. I had taken it all back. And more than that, I had discovered a strength I never knew I had. I was not the weak, trusting old woman he thought I was. I was a survivor, a fighter, someone who refused to be a victim. And that knowledge, that certainty about who I was and what I was capable of, was worth more than any house or bank account. It was worth everything. As I sat in my garden that spring morning, I thought about the younger version of myself. The woman who had walked into that coffee shop 3 years ago and overheard her son plotting against her. I wished I could tell her that it would be okay, that she would survive, that she would be stronger for it. But she had to walk that painful road herself, had to find her own strength, had to learn to fight back, just like we all do when life betrays us. The only difference was that my betrayal came from the person I loved most in the world, from the child I had given everything to.
And I survived it anyway.
That was my triumph. Not the court case, not getting my house back, not even sending him to prison. My triumph was that I survived. I healed. I built a new life from the ashes of the old one. And I did it all on my own terms. As I sat there in the sunshine, surrounded by the beauty I had created in my garden, I felt something I hadn't felt in years.
Peace.
True, deep, unshakable peace. Daniel couldn't take that from me. No one could. It was mine. And that, in the end, was all that mattered.